Are we ever going to see a dynasty in college football that matches Alabama under Saban?
I think there's I think there's potential for it, but I do think that with um, the new format is going to do one of two things. It's either going to unlock the key for that to happen, i.e., Georgia with Kirby Smart. Like if you lose two games, you can still make the playoffs and run the table because of the expanded playoff, which leads to a potential dynasty right there. Because how often is Georgia going to lose two games with the way that they're looking, with the way that they've been? It's going to be kind of tough to see them doing that. And then, because we were talking about Georgia made the playoffs this year, they might have still won it. So
Yeah.
Georgia is certainly a team that I think is in the mix to do that. But in terms of everyone else, possibly Dan Lanning. I know that sounds a little crazy, not a left field, but like what he is building at Oregon is something special. Oregon stock is so valuable right now. If you're buying now, like you've already bought too late. The price has already moved up by quite a bit. I think there is the potential that possibly Oregon going into the Big Ten, where they just got to really kind of look at, I guess some of their Pac-12 counterparts that also joined, because the Big Ten went from, just really two teams and one decent team in Penn State to a pretty dang good league with all the Pac-12 additions. So it'll be really interesting to see, because I think the expanded playoff, I'll go back to that one point, opens up the door for a lot of error, especially in a league like that. So I think there is the potential for Saban to be matched just because of the expansion of the playoff. And there's a couple guys out there who are looking pretty promising. But at the same time, I wouldn't put my money on it. There's a lot of parity these days with college football and the way that the portal is going. And I'm here for it, man. I still hate a lot of aspects with the portal. I hate the bag dropping. I hate everything about that, and the lack of tradition and all these other things, no loyalty. But at the same time, it is producing some more parity, and we saw that with Washington this year. We saw that with many other teams this year. I mean, we saw it with Arizona before they lost Jed Fish. So I mean
Cincinnati
the
made
portal
the
is doing
playoff
wonders
as
for
a
some teams.
G5 a couple of years ago. Like, let's not forget, we had Cincinnati in the college football playoff. But
Yep.
yeah, I completely agree with you, man. I think that's like a overarching, topic, is whether the transfer portal is producing more or less parity. But I'd say so far, I would say it is probably producing a little bit more parity. I think we thought it would go the opposite direction a little bit, but to our surprise, it hasn't. But I think that's the point about Saban here, is the Saban dynasty. I feel like moving forward, it's just going to be more difficult for those reasons that you just said, for a team to replicate that, because of the expanded playoff. Like, more opportunities to trip up. Yeah, you'll have a bigger safety net, but then, man, you got to win like 3-4 playoff games in a row against competition that's going to be a little bit more equal to you, especially with NIL and the transfer portal. Like, the playing field at the top of the sport is way more level than what it was in the Saban era, and a lot of that was because of Saban. Yeah. So I feel like it'll be more difficult. And I mean, what's the next closest thing we have to Nick Saban right now? It's Kirby Smart in Georgia.
It is Kirby Smart. Yeah.
Kirby's got two. All right, you got two. Well, sick. You got to get four
Still
more.
got a long way to go.
You
Yeah.
got to get four more, buddy. Like, I don't know if that's going to happen. Like, you saw it like this year. Like, Georgia arguably had the best team. They arguably were better than Michigan.
I mean, if Georgia made the playoffs, they probably would have won the damn thing.
They might have, but like, it still shows, like, even a team like Georgia, you slip up against Alabama in the SEC championship, and there goes your title hopes. That could be like, what if they slip up in a playoff game?
Yeah. I mean, Georgia was just so unfortunate that they had kind of an easy schedule, and that bit them with that one loss to Alabama. And then that other teams were doing so good that particular year. Just very bad luck for Georgia this year.
It was pretty bad luck for Georgia, but it goes to the point. It's pins and needles, man. It's hard to do. And with the transfer portal, like, the era of instability, players can just go wherever they want. Like, it's still kind of hard for Georgia, teams like Georgia and Alabama, to maintain the depth they used to have, because before it was like they would just rack up these 5-star classes and those kids couldn't go anywhere. Now it's like, okay, those like 5 stars that maybe don't pan out quite as well, or the high 4 stars that are like stuck behind 2 5 stars, like, they're leaving. It's hard to maintain that depth. I just think it's going to be very difficult. I don't think we're ever going to see a Saban like run ever again. But if somebody's going to do it, I'd say Kirby Smart, pretty locked and loaded. He's got the profile to do it, but I don't think it's going to happen. And Dan Lanning, I mean, man, Oregon is yet to win a national championship. They got to win one first. But like, I
I'm
agree
definitely
with you.
aware, but he's. I've never seen Oregon. I think Oregon is at the actual absolute apex of like where they've ever been right now in their program's history in terms of like
Yeah,
their trajectory, and they're just showing so much promise.
I do agree with you that the ingredients are there for sure. I will give you that. But yeah, man, I think the one last thing before we move on about the Saban dynasty, I think the most impressive part about it, to me at least, is that he won national championships in like two different eras of the sport. Because
Yes.
he won multiple national championships in an era where defense was king and you didn't really need a good offense or good quarterback to win. And then around like the mid 2010s, when it started shifting to more offense wins you national championships, he won with that. And then it was
And
like,
I'll tell you,
remember,
Shub, this is why he's the GOAT. This is why he's the GOAT. Because, you know, in the NBA, they have the Jordan LeBron argument, who's the GOAT. They played in different eras. Neither one won in both eras. Nick Saban played in two different eras, and he won in both eras. So no one is going to pull a Saban, man. Like, we are in a new era now. Like, no one is going to pull a Saban.
remember around 2017, it was, Alabama has produced multiple first round picks at every single position except quarterback. And then it was like, all
Yeah.
right, so the only position he hasn't got a first round pick yet
Back
is
then,
at
yeah.
quarterback. And he's like, all
It was
right,
the McCarron days. McElroy.
wait, I need a first round pick at quarterback now. Okay, I'll get Tua Tagovailoa,
Bryce
I'll get
Young.
Bryce Young, Mac Jones. Yeah,
Mac Jones.
I mean,
Jones.
and then he just racks off three of them. I mean, that's impressive. That's the Saban era for me.
That
He won in
picture of
two
Mac
different
Jones,
eras.
man. Like the picture of Mac Jones with the cigar in his mouth, being a whole fat belly hanging out and everything. Just knowing that he has success with that as his quarterback, given what we see Mac Jones becoming in the NFL, that just shows how good Saban is as a coach, man.
I mean, that 2020 Alabama team was like one of the best teams of all time. It's just they played in the COVID year, so I don't feel like it would have showed. But I mean, that was one of the best teams ever, I think. Yeah, so the Nick Saban retirement, I know that going into the offseason, there were rumors that like, hey, this could potentially be Nick Saban's like last year, but those were like very fringe, like, oh, I don't think anybody actually believed it. In hindsight, it's easier to say, oh yeah, like, yeah, you could tell like after the games he was like acting different, he seemed like he was taking it in, etc., etc.
Which we thought about Ferenc, but he didn't step down. So
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say in hindsight, but I don't think most people would not predict that he would have retired this early. In fact, I thought he had like a couple more years in him at least.
I did too. I thought Saban had like 3 or 4 more years in him.
And allegedly, the athletic department, like the AD, they weren't in on it until the very end. Like he didn't let anybody know. It was very closed off. So it very much took him by surprise. But man, before we get into their new head coach, which I think we're both going to agree was a great hire, but just really quick, the Nick Saban legacy at Alabama, man. All I got to say is, let me
He's
ask
the
you
GOAT,
this.
man.
He is the GOAT.
He's
Undisputed
the
the
GOAT.
GOAT.
Undisputed, absolutely.
You know what's funny is I feel like it's a full circle moment here because growing up when I was a kid, a young teenager, when I first started getting into college football is right around when the Alabama dynasty started taking form. That's when like I really, really was like getting into college football. I hated Nick Saban. I hated Alabama, man. After the 2011 season, how
Well, I think
Oklahoma
everyone,
State
I
got
think
done
everyone
dirty.
who wasn't an Alabama fan shared that sentiment.
Yeah, I despise the guy, man. Like he was the devil. And now I'm like, I don't respect anybody more in the sport than Nick Saban. Like I'm like, man, I wish like Nick Saban was like my grandpa or something. You know what I mean? Like he's that type of guy.